And I'm gonna start. This is probably the same music. Wow. Oh wait, that was the music. Oh, never mind. I wasn't going as long as I thought it was. Yes! Okay. Practical tips. This is the part you've been waiting for, right? I don't know. Okay. Connect to higher self. Done! Just do it. But here's the nitty-gritty. Kind of trying to form this as I go. Silence and stillness are very key, and if I underemphasized that when I started talking about them, because I did mention that some people say all you have to do is still your mind and listen. That is true. That is true, but it's not. You can't. That's not exactly what they mean, or if it is, then you know they might be having an experience that you really can't call knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. At this point in my personal development, when I do choose to connect to my Holy Guardian Angel, he doesn't say anything. He just radiates joy and bliss and healing and electrical energy and awe, you know, and it's quite moving. And if I want to ask it something, I will. Mostly for me, communicating with my Holy Guardian Angel now comes in the form, at least I attempt to do so, of a sudden apprehension. And to use, let me just focus on that again, sudden apprehension. To use the sudden apprehension technique, which becomes a technique, and it does involve clearing up a lot of channels. This is my thing. Is to set your intent. You kind of like put your intent in your third eye and just hold it there, and I just feel a pressure, and then I open my crown chakra to my Holy Guardian Angel, so there's another intent basically, and then you let it all go. Just except for the focus and the stillness and the the focus and the experience everything that's happening as it's happening, and then the openness. And the information will come through. For somebody who hasn't been working from the top-down path, which is the path that I follow, this is probably going to be a lot more difficult, and you will take this method, if you want to even call it that, as a more extended meditation, so that you're focusing, you're developing the stillness, you're choosing an intent. Yeah, and it'll probably take the form of a more extended meditation. The other thing I wanted to talk about was mantra. Mantra is extremely useful for opening to your highest self. Specifically for opening the top channel. So what I was talking about, top down, it's extremely important. And I just put my hands in the prayer mudra, just like a normal person would pray. And I have a mantra that I created. I happen to be a linguophile and an old conlang enthusiast. Conlang stands for constructed language, and I happen to have the skeleton of a workable language with grammar and syntax and a lexicon that is completely made up. And the reason I use this, I didn't just put words, I didn't just put, I didn't use a random word generator, and so it created a bunch of crazy, random, arbitrary words. Every word in my language is specifically chosen for the feeling that it conveys. And it's crazy, I know, I'm insane. And I've been working on it since I was like 15 years old or so. Wow. And so my mantra is in this language. I now call it a magical language. It's not like magical and that it does anything magical, except that every word was personally chosen because the word sounds like what it means to me. Okay? To some degree or another. And there is some amount of arbitrariness to it. Anyway, my mantra is in that language, my language. That way it is wholly and personally unique and special to me. So when I speak it, I know nobody has uttered the string before. Only I have. If it were somewhere else, no, it's only ever been spoken by me. I know that because it's very specific, and it's not a short mantra either. It is very simple, and basically the translation is, I bliss to my holy guardian angel, which I also gave a name. It's up to you whether you want to name your holy guardian angel. At one time I said, no, not going to name it because that will cheapen it. It is not a name. It is beyond that, and I don't want it to be like how somebody prays to Allah or Jehovah or anything like that. It is not a name, so I'm not going to give it one. Then I thought, you know what, it's practical to have a name, so that when I just say, this is an arbitrary label, but it's useful, because I can call you this, and it always means you. Then I got away from the practice again, and then I came back to it. Now I'm back to it, and when I say it, I do it with the full realization, hopefully, of what it represents. And then I chose very simply to reverse it in the last part of my mantra, so that it's backwards. And to me, that's a representation of the shadow of what I know my holy guardian angel is. And so it's one way in the first part of the mantra and then backwards in the second part of the mantra, because it is an arbitrary name set of vowels and consonants. And I acknowledge that fact. To me, that acknowledges that fact even further, and also represents everything that I don't understand about blank. And the other thing, I guess I have to say a bunch of things about mantra, are the states of mind that happen during mantra practice. You can chant the Maha Mantra, you know, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and be thinking about your grocery list when you're going to pick up your kids at school, what time soccer practice is tomorrow, the situation in Libya, or whatever. Or you could be thinking, this is stupid, you know, it's not going to do anything. Or you could just be zoning out completely. They're engaging in mantra or chanting or any of that stuff. It's always been very difficult for me, and I would often find myself thinking about other things while I was chanting mantras. And the only thing that I can say is listen to the words, say the words. Sometimes it helps to rock back and forth to the words. Feel the meaning of the words, even if it's in a different language. Once you've gotten that down and you really can pay attention to your mantra chanting, I like to set a number on it so that I always give myself time to be distracted. And I always give myself time to say it enough. If you say it, if you're gonna, you know, just make sure that you chant it for at least like 15 minutes or something like that, then that's fabulous. You know, you're gonna give yourself enough time to be distracted. But for me, during the day, if I just want to set a positive intention for something or connect to my highest self, you know, with its blessing on what I'm about to do, my limit is 3. I will not do it less than 3 times. And then I chant Om 3 times afterwards to just kind of like bring it all to grounding, bring it out into manifestation, and it satisfies me. It's an arbitrary number, but it satisfies me because I know, okay, the first one, okay, that was just a practice run, now I'm paying attention, and it's long, it's not, you know, really short. So it satisfies me in that I've really given the time to focus and at least say it 3 times, and then at least give myself time to Om it all together, and it sort of gels out together into the universe, and I feel it. I physically feel the tingling sensation coming down. It is connecting me to my highest self or my holy guardian angel, and then I'm satisfied, and I can say, okay, now I can go about doing what I was going to do. The other thing is that, and I was talking about this before, once you get comfortable and you can pay attention, you'll start to notice things that are bothering you. At least this is what happens for me. all the things that are distracting me at that moment. And it can be your grocery list and all that other stuff, but personally it's like emotional things, worry, paranoia, a situation that's blocking me right now from really delving into the energy or being immersed into the energy that is coming through me, because you're always connected to your highest self. Always, 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 already. And so what I try to do is to get more emotionally involved in the mantra work. This brings me to inflaming yourself in prayer. One of the things in the Abramelin operation, that's what it's called, it's an operation, okay, is inflaming yourself in prayer. This is what the 15th century text calls it. And this is the term, of course, that is referred to in this book. And all it says is this in the original text. And this is, of course, translated into English. I'm not even sure what it was before. Could have been English. You will begin to inflame yourself in praying, and you will see appear an extraordinary and supernatural splendor which will fill the whole apartment. Apartment meaning room. And you will surround will surround you with an inexpressible odor. That's, yeah, smell, odor. You say ardor or odor, I don't know. This alone will console you and comfort your heart, so that you shall call forever happy the day of the Lord. Praise be to Jesus. Okay. If you sincerely believe in the sort of God who has a big white beard and sits on puffy clouds, then the Abramelin operation requires little elucidation beyond what is written in the original book. However, such a belief requires a tremendous faith in a nearly animistic God, and the operation will depend on your ability to pray with sincerity for His divine grace and mercy. We live in an era when most of the people who claim membership in one religion or another live without a real connection to any kind of deity. For many people, prayer has become an empty gesture, and the hope of actually getting anything out of it seems absurd. As J.F.C. Fuller stated almost 100 years ago, in these present times, prayer has become a mockery. It is hard, how hard we know well, for any one prayer with that earnestness which brings with it reward. The rationalist has so befouled prayer with his wordy slush that it is indeed a hard task to dissociate it from the host of external symbols and images. Incredibly true. You might be completely comfortable with prayer. For me, prayer is mantra work. That's why I'm bringing this up now. But I was raised a Christian, and prayer, I've always tried to make it something serious, because I was part of a Christian group that was really disdainful of the whole of modern Christendom apart from their particular cult sect. And they prided themselves on being more serious than other people, serious, you know, more spiritually devotional or whatever. And so I always tried to make prayer a serious thing. But you find yourself saying the same things over and over. If you're coming from the Catholic perspective, then that's all you have to do, basically, is say the same thing over and over, and that's never what prayer had meant to me, especially empty prayer, when you're trying to make a connection with God. If you really believe you are talking to God, then you better have something good to say. Yeah, that's not really what I mean. The Abramelin presents a perfect, beautiful, and simple method of attaining the knowledge and conversation of your holy guardian angel, of establishing that universal transcendental awareness. But for most people, the method would seem hardly to have a chance of working. We need to take a look at the nature of prayer, and specifically into the kind of prayer that Abramelin prescribes. In truth, the only specific injunction that the Abramelin gives as to the method of prayer is that you should inflame yourself in praying. What you are trying to do is to make a connection and establish a relationship with the greater consciousness of the universe. Your normal consciousness is unable to make such a connection, so it is necessary to inflame yourself to the point where you're no longer in your normal state of consciousness. The purpose of all prayer, meditation, invocation, and mental gymnastics is to direct your consciousness through concentration to a one-pointedness, and in this one-pointedness is the rapture and ecstasy of the vision or conversation of the holy guardian angel. The Christian mystic Miguel de Molinos says on this subject, how few are the souls that attain to this perfect way of praying because they do not penetrate enough into this internal recollection and mystical silence. Okay. Yeah. There's later several methods that encapsulate the entire program and have all the little methods, some of which I'm describing. And one of them is basically just, in its purest form, grace. You're doing all of these operations and things, consecration, confession, inflaming yourself in prayer, and that's basically it. When it comes down to it, all that's needed is an earnest desire for this being to come down into you and to give you an experience of it. And you have to open yourself enough, and you have to be concentrated enough, and inflame yourself enough to make it happen. For me, inflame implies more of an emotionally charged state. And this is more what I meant to talk about. What he was just saying is a little different, and actually more applies to silence and stillness and having an altered consciousness, which is true enough. But what I was talking about is becoming emotionally involved in the words that you're saying. If you choose to use a mantra, then emotionally involved in the mantra that you're reciting. And once you have that mantra, whatever it is, if it's in English, your native language, or a special language, or a Sanskrit mantra, you could even use the Maha Mantra, or any Sanskrit mantra, or whatever, as long as it has personal significance to you, and you say it, and you mean what you say. Becoming inflamed means, to me, generating basically physical emotional heat, because your feelings are so strong. And if you can do that and direct that towards your prayer work or your mantra work, then a huge step will be taken. You will be taking a huge step towards getting closer to your highest self. There's more I want to say on that, but I don't know, it's not coming through right now, I don't think. Okay. There's another one that I want to touch on, and I think I can just talk about it myself. I'll put the book down. I wasn't going to talk about this one. I kind of want to do an entire video devoted to it. Is the process of confession. What? Yes, I may have mentioned this before, and I know I've made videos about it before, but there were, I think, failed attempts or ones that I didn't want to post. Confess your sins, brothers and sisters. Seriously. It is an invaluable tool. Okay, if you're not Catholic, you've never had the process of confession. I am not Catholic. I never was Catholic. I have never had the opportunity to experience stepping into a confessional and confessing your sins. What they mean, at least in this book, by confession and confessing your sins are confessing basically every distraction, everything that you've done that is unsavory, that is a hindrance to your spiritual awakening, that is a hindrance to opening to love, to being love, to expressing love, to opening to your highest self, your holy guardian angel. Let's say you drink too much. You get emotional about that and you confess it. You say, I have allowed myself to continually drink too much on a regular basis. I am fully aware that it hinders my growth as a spiritual being, it hinders my ascension, it is not healthy, it hinders my relationships, etc. You get emotional about that, and this isn't, I don't think this is exactly mentioned in the book that I'm talking about during the process of confession, but I have found this to be absolutely an extraordinary freaking experience. You continue that confession, you get emotional about that thing, and then you forgive yourself for it. If you do not forgive yourself, and you can find this all over YouTube about the process of self-forgiveness and how important it is, because your angel, your highest self, that being of which you are but a shadowy reflection, has already forgiven you. It didn't even have to think about it. You have always already been forgiven. And so I always use that phrase because always-already, I stole that from Ken Wilber, a great term. Always already. That's it. Always already forgiven. I forgive myself as I am always already forgiven. I forgive myself as I am always already forgiven. I forgive, and then I keep saying it until I really feel myself forgiving myself, and then the emotional charge that you've just built up after confessing and saying everything that you needed to say, whether you've said it out loud, whether you've told your best friend about it, your lover about it, whether you've kept it bottled up inside you for so long, it gets expressed, and then it gets forgiven. And I cannot tell you how important this process is. I don't do it enough. But there was a time when I was doing it, every time I would sit down and begin a practice session. And I should continue it. I don't know why I stopped doing it. It's so important. Even if you find yourself confessing the same things over and over and over again, just keep doing it, because you're already forgiven and you need to forgive yourself for them. If you want to get into the process of self-forgiveness and actually have a discussion about it, there are a lot of issues that can come up for people, especially when it comes to self-forgiveness, because you don't want to constantly give yourself an excuse for bad behavior. That's not what you're doing. It's not what you're doing. You are forgiving yourself because you do deserve to be forgiven for whatever it was that you did that is bothering you. It probably doesn't bother somebody else, just think of it that way, and it certainly does not bother the universe, or your holy guardian angel, or your highest self, or your Atman consciousness, or whatever. It's, you know, like, when you connect to your higher self, your highest self, and you do confess something, and you do feel the forgiveness that it does give you, it's basically like laughing almost. It's like, of course I'll forgive you. You know, we didn't even have to ask that question. Come on, you know, it's insatiable. Yeah. So that's the last one. These are just things. I suppose they're probably more like tools and methods to remove obstacles so that you can connect further to your holy guardian angel. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure I even answered anybody's question. But these are just some of the things that I know on the path to connecting to your holy guardian angel. And of course, any type of mental purification, stillness meditation, mantra work, confession is actually, and I also wanted to say that this process of confession is a psychological exercise as well. You can use pendulums, you can use tarot cards, although I don't recommend them for beginners because they're incredibly difficult to wrap your mind around. Rune stones, you can use a lot of things to connect to your holy guardian angel or your highest self, because you're already connected to it. And that's why I had to answer somebody's questions, like, how do you connect to your highest self? Well, you just do, because you're already connected to it. You don't even do, you just are, you know, but that's not practical. And then also somebody mentioned astral work. If you astrally project, you can spend a long time really clearing yourself out. Clear yourself out with the process of confession. Clear yourself out with deep emotional mantra work or inflaming yourself in prayer. All of these different processes. Excuse me. Whoa. Goodness. Pardon me there. With all these different processes, and then do your astral work. Oh, and take as much time as you can to set that intention that you are going to contact in one way or another your highest self. You are going to meet that being tonight, or whenever it is you are practicing this, and then do your astral projection with that intent in mind, and that should be enough to propel you at least somewhere closer to it and to have an experience. I don't know, I don't do astral work. This book actually, I think, does cover astral work, now that I think about it. And I didn't realize that when I was talking to this person. Yeah, astral travel. Yeah, there's a whole section of that in there, and the basic technique, one called Rising on the Plains. And yeah, again, I completely recommend this book. Very much so. Dream work, you know. Yeah. Whoa. I guess it's over. Oh, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this short series and my crazy rants on connecting with your highest self. And I hope it cleared up something and didn't confuse you further. Okay, bye.